He said he wasn't allowed to talk about it, so he wasn't going to talk about it, but he was in favour of it. The people stood and clapped him to the rafters.
Really?
It was just amazing.
And there weren't sort of cries of rage from the back of the pews?
No, and he's still there. So,
Chris, has the morale of the Australian priesthood been shattered by a decade or so of sexual abuse claims, as I'm quite sure it's been the case with the Anglicans?
I think they're ashamed to go out in the street with their collar on, and some of them tell stories of being spat at in the street. Now, this is terribly shameful because most of them are wonderfully courageous men of dedicated service, and they're not allowed to go across to the playground now and even put a hand on the children.
Now, Arthur, the sort of changes we're talking about, in effect, of Vatican III, even if it's not officially organised, can't happen with the current structure and with the current Pope.
It is happening.
You think it's happening with the firm hand of...
Yeah. It's happening underneath it, because there's... you might say it's an intellectual schism or it's a practicing schism. There are parishes, not in the majority in this country, but there are a significant number of parishes in this country. It's a pleasure to go to church to. I mean, it genuinely is. It's welcoming, it's reassuring.
Nourishing.
You're there to find God, and everything about that community helps you to do so.
And I take it that the market share isn't being overwhelmed by the more populist evangelicals?
I don't think so. No, I think that Catholics have found their voice, and they refuse to be driven out of what they consider their church, our church, if you will, by any decision of a bishop or the Pope or the Vatican. They say, no, damn it, this is ours.
In Wagga at Easter time this year, at Albury at Easter time, there were 2 celebrations for the forgiveness, for reconciliation. One was run by the very conservative priest from the new seminary down there. There were 12 people there in that church. There were 1,000 people in Wodonga.
Is that right? Yeah.
I think that's a sign of the awareness, the growing awareness that the sexual corruption in the church comes from the top down, and the Reformation comes from the bottom up.
Absolutely.
I'm astonished we're getting such unanimity. I thought there'd be a real fight amongst you three, or at least on elements of this. Well, the whole world sat back and applauded Vatican II. It was an extraordinary time for Catholicism.
No, they didn't. The clergy didn't.
Well, okay, but the rest of the world did. It was liberating and exhilarating for non-Catholics as well. And so it'd be great if out of this terrible, terrible crisis, something revolutionary happened, wouldn't it? Gentlemen, I thank you very, very much for your time. Chris Geraghty, former priest, theology lecturer, and he's now a judge in the Compensation Court of New South Wales. His last book, Catholics in the Wilderness, your new upcoming book is...
The Priest Factory.
The Priest Factory. Richard Sipe, former priest, psychotherapist now, author of several books, including, buy copies for your local hierarchy, Sex, Priests and Power, A Secret World, Sexuality and the Search for Celibacy, and Celibacy, A Way of Living, Loving and Serving. And thank you very much, Richard. Also, from California, Arthur Jones, travelling editor, emeritus editor of the National Catholic Reporter in the US. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure and a privilege. That's it from another Classic LNL. We'll be back with another program from the archives next week. In the meantime, I want you all to practice celibacy. Stick around now on ABC Radio National for the news, and we will see you later.